design engineers. So these are not everybody from the entire team, but we wanted to get some of the key people from each aspect of architect, CM, engineer, and sub to give their input. So when we set this up, the learning objectives are quite simple. Understand the benefits and limitations of IPD. How did the BIM and IPD process affect the work of the architects and engineers? How did it affect construction management workflow? And finally, how did it affect the involvement of the subcontractors in the iterative design phase? So, has anybody not heard of integrated project delivery at this point? It's been around for quite some time. So I didn't want to spend too much time talking about it and giving a full-blown thing, so I only have a few slides. But it's based on 9 key principles, and if you want to get into this and read more about it, you can always go to the AAA site and download the Integrated Project Delivery Guide that was done back in 2007. Defining IPD, I wanted to take that one step further, and a lot of people will that are talking about BIM in the industry have a tendency to automatically couple BIM and IPD. You're doing BIM, you're doing that IPD thing. Not really. You're working in design assist, you're collaborating with a sub, you're doing IPD. Not really. There's a document that I did a quick look on AI's website, that's where I first found it, but I couldn't find it just the other day, so you might have to do a little Google search for it, but it's a document called IPD for Public and Private Owners. It was written 2 years ago, or a year ago, and it differentiates between IPD as a philosophy and IPD as a delivery method. So a lot of people might say integrated practice, or maybe it's just integrated design. What we did on this project, where we were actually in a real contractual relationship with Structure Tone, RCM. Not everybody at the table here was a party to the IPD contract. So basically, HRK was owner and architect, so you might say, well, we're kind of cheating, but not really. We had our managing principal, Carl Galileo, acted as the owner, and our technical director, Stephen Weinberg, was the architect, essentially, in that agreement. So in that document, they define level 1 as what they call typical collaboration. So that's something like traditional, not design to build. They don't qualify that as integrated design, but CM's risk or design build. That's a low level of integration. But it's starting to get into integration, where the construction manager is involved early. Enhanced collaboration or level 2 is not a contractual obligation, but it's like CM at risk or design build with something like a transitional document or a shared general conditions between the architect and the contractor. So it still doesn't bring everybody together. And level 3 is the one where, yes, it's required because you're in a contract together. And I'll describe the difference between those. So there's level 2 collaborations. There's an AAA 8295 general conditions that can exist between the architect and the contractor. But you notice that the legs are still separated. The owner has separate contracts, service contracts between the architect and the contractor. Then we get into what we really did on this project, where the owner, the architect, the contractor are all in a multi-party agreement. And that's where those concepts of mutual trusts, non-litigation, collaboration, BIM is usually thrown in there. And it's multi-party, it's not tri-party. A lot of people think IPD equals tri-party. It could be 3 parties, it could be 10 parties. Depends on the type of project and what's important to the project. If you're building a bridge, maybe your structural engineer and structural fabricator need to be in this multi-party agreement instead of the general contract. Who knows? It could vary. A different take on this is a single purpose entity. Same concept, it's just that multi-thing in the middle is a company. Now, some jurisdictions don't allow that because that company has to be licensed to do architecture and build. And so whether it's a multi-party agreement, single purpose entity, it doesn't really matter as far as how it functions, just what the legal ramifications are. Now the trick here with integrated project delivery, even just the level 1 and the level 2, is to overall shorten the delivery schedule. So, and you'll hear about this as we talk, as our panelists talk through the experiences. The integrated approach it's not like you design, you go through schematic design, DD, construction documents, you stop, and then you put it out to bid. Notice that implementation documents is essentially a hybrid of construction documents and shop drawings. And that starts to merge together. We had a very short schedule on our office project, and Jason will tell you a little bit about that. So we had to, this was one of the reasons why we had to do this. So the last part of this is why do we do this? Aside from getting a better product, getting it in faster time, compensation. There's this notion of an incentive compensation layer where additional profit is tied to your performance on the project. So it's all about the success of the project. It's incentivizing. It's not punishing bad behavior. It's the opposite. It's rewarding good behavior. If any of you have kids, I have 4, you know that rewarding good behavior will always get you better results. Or they say you get more bees with honey than you do with poop. This is very true, and what IPD is all about. So your direct costs are guaranteed, and then the profit is tied to the performance of the job. And usually it's about cost. Did the project finish within budget? If it exceeded, if you went over budget, then you get some of your profit gets taken away. If you came under budget, then guess what? You get extra profit. If your project finished on time, great, here's your profit. Did it finish early? Here's extra profit. Degrading audio quality. Right? Hopefully that won't keep going. With our particular job, we were going for LEED Platinum. We just achieved it. So, did we achieve it? Great. That's another layer of profit. And quality is kind of a sticky one where it's, you want high quality, but you usually have to hire a third-party reviewer to say that, yes, it is high quality. You achieved the quality goals. So that's a sticky one, but usually a common one in IPD. So I think I've talked enough. You can download more info about this at Google it, aa.org/IPD. They have a whole page of resources about it. I found this little cartoon on an AIA presentation about IPD that it's really true. Our industry today is this. There's a hole in the boat, and architecture at one end, builders or themselves at the other end. Hey, man, sure glad the hole isn't in our end. You're all going down. And IPD is the realization that, hey, you know what? We're going to sink. Let's all pitch in and bail the boat out. So I'm going to turn it over now to Jason, who's going to talk a little bit about the architect's perspective. And feel free to ask questions. So this is, we went through some practice sessions of this, and we had a really great dynamic web practice session. We had a live session last week where we spent a good hour and a half hashing out a lot of stuff, and we said we wish we were to record it and display it, but we'll relive a lot of those conversations now. So, a microphone issue?
No, we're just going to switch to this motion.
Is this working?
So I'm all right?
You're live.
All right. My name is Jason Zoss. Look at this team in action.
Yeah, we had 2 mics here, and we knew we wanted multiple mics because as we were doing this practice session, we knew that all the other panelists are free to contribute to everybody else's presentation whenever they like. That's the spirit of IPD, and you're going to see it come alive in that presentation as well. So sit back and enjoy.
Awesome start. So my name is Jason Zoss. I've been at HOK about 3.5 years. I'm primarily a BIM coordinator, but I've also done research and product design. And I'm in the healthcare studio right now, so I usually work on really large projects. My current project is a 1.6 million square foot military hospital in Germany. So to work on a project like this was really exciting because you go through all the phases in a short amount of time, and IPD was also great. So from HOK's perspective, as architect and owner, I can say that the project was a huge success. We achieved our sustainability goals, we achieved our financial goals, corporate goals. The employees, for the most part, are very happy with the new location and the new office. It looks great. And I think a lot of that does have to do with IPD. Obviously, can't attribute all the success to IPD, but it set up an atmosphere of cooperation and kind of a mutual goal that we all were on board together with. And we had a really great experience. Two of the most senior people in our office said they'd never seen a project go so smoothly. This is just quick background information on HOK. We have offices all over the world, US, Canada, Europe, Asia Pacific, Middle East, India, also Texas.
I can read some off if you want.
Sustainability stats, that's one of our core values, sustainability. We have a lot of LEED certified projects, hundreds more on the board. BREEAM is sort of LEED for Europeans. Green Mark is sort of LEED for sports projects. Industry rankings, we're a really large firm. By some measures, the largest North American architecture engineering firm. And we're also ranked highly for BIM and sustainable design. So this is our old office in Chelsea, 18th Street and 6th Ave. We're on the 6th floor there. And it wasn't a bad office, but it was just kind of in need of renovation, and we were on a couple different floors. We wanted to get everybody together on the same floor. So instead of trying to renovate the office while we were still working there, we decided that it made more sense to move. And so our goals for a new office were, we wanted it to be aligned with our core values, sustainability. We wanted to go for LEED Platinum. We just received that maybe a month ago. And we killed it. We had like 87 points. And then BIM, that's just part of that's what we do. I think 99% of our projects are BIM projects done in Revit. Integrated design, this is something we really believe in. This is a great success for this project. But in reality, we've only done one other IPD project in all of HOK internationally. We did Autodesk's home office in San Francisco or LA.
Yeah, and just remember that we've done a lot of other IPD philosophical, where a client will come in and say, yeah, we've heard of IPD, well, here's the contract version, but we can do design assist, we can do lots of other different variations that are not contractually done in a multi-party agreement. We've done lots of those. But as an official contractual arrangement, this is only the second one.
So in the beginning of before we started design, we had visioning sessions where we had employees at the office. We wanted everyone to have their saves. It was really exciting for us to be able to talk about what we wanted out of the new office, where it should be located, that type of thing. And we had everyone from fairly new employees, and then office leadership were all involved in that. So just some images from the visioning. One thing we did was we put up a map of Manhattan with a couple potential locations marked and put it up in the pantry.
You can't dream big as large.
But you can see the map with all the little sticky notes. That was kind of funny. There were some really good ideas on there, but also the snarky employees came out with sarcastic remarks about locations like this one.
You gotta love the one that's not even on Manhattan. It's like right off the top.
Someone
That's up there in Westchester.
wanted to work in the Bronx. So we decided that Bryant Park was the best overall location for the office. We kind of positioned ourselves near some icons of the city, the New York Public Library, there's the new Bank of America LEED Platinum building. It's close to transportation, easy for clients to get to, that type of thing.
Right, park, a great place to have lunch.
Yes, exactly.
It's
It's great to work there.
You can watch movies from their office.
And I think we also kind of wanted to keep our eyes on KPF, one of our good friends / nemesis firms who are across the park there. It's a great support. It's Bryant Park and the rebuilding. So this was the existing conditions when we showed up. And the first step in the BIM process for us on this project was to do a laser scan and create a point cloud. And I was brought in sort of on the tail end of interpreting the So,
One of the key reasons doing that was because we loved the location, but one of the drawbacks was it's pretty low ceiling height. It was about 9 feet or so.
yeah,
And we wanted to make sure that where we had to run mechanical and pump plumbing and electric, that it fit within the design that we wanted to fit it.
yeah,
You'll see it in the photographs
as
later.
accurate as possible. And one of the interesting things about the point cloud is that it's just a cloud of points. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this process, but there's no, the cloud, it doesn't know what's what. It's just.
Show of hands, who's working with point cloud?
All right, so maybe half. Okay. So all those points, they're just points, and it doesn't know anything other than that.
The question from the webcast, did we outsource the laser scanning?
We had a company called Langen do the scan. A licensed surveyor, according to a rush. Seems to stop working.
Oh, I might have clicked out of it, my fault. I'll get you going. There you go.
So I think, do you want to point at that tie back to the sprinkler for the armored people? So one of the interesting things we ran into with the point cloud is, not only, so we had all these things that were obviously columns in the cloud, but some things that, were kind of missed with this, and that cloud kind of looks like this. And so for a little while we didn't, and this is structural, and this is sprinklers that are getting demolished. So these are being ripped out, and this was staying. But in the point cloud, during interpretation, the structural ties got missed for a very brief amount of time, but it was kind of a scary realization that we almost missed that. And so after, when you have the point cloud, I don't remember the software that Langen used to put it. I think it was delivered as a DWG file. So we had this super accurate model, but we also had to make it usable because when you're looking at a floor plan, you don't want to see every nook and cranny and wave and bump in the floor or the beams or the columns. So we kind of went through a smoothing out process where maybe it's not as precisely accurate, but you can look at it and understand what all the lines mean.
I have a question.
Question?
Access to the space during the time in which you were interpreting and creating the layout?
We did, and we had to go back, and another issue with the point cloud is that there were some beams that were covered during the scan. So we had, actually Arash and I went back and measured, 30, 50 beams.
Not what you mean.
Right.
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
We ended up having to look in one of the areas that was causing a lot of problems, which was the lobby area where it was the most services crossing. So where we were having trouble during flash detection meetings, we noticed some inconsistencies on what the beams were actually doing. So we just used some good judgment and said, let's go out there and, well, I said let's, so I didn't actually go, but let's go out there and find out what's within the enclosure, and
Also, was floor leveling ever an issue? Like with the existing floor that you were working with, was that dilapidated to the point where you measured to a datum at like the 5 foot mark, or you just measured it?
It was okay. I think we used our best guess, at what the kind of median, or I don't know.
Typically, what the GC does is they, no matter what happens, they'll step in there and get another survey done based off the elevator thresholds, because that's really your only point of constraint, on a typical office building or any building when you're starting to just do one floor. So we remeasured everything, calibrated off the elevator constraints.
I'm just going to jump 2 seconds. When anybody asks a question, if you could just repeat the question for the webcast, because they usually can't hear that. Just a reminder.
The question for that last comment was a start point, I guess, and the levelness of the floor in relation to, I guess, the point cloud. Was that how to say?
Yeah. Yeah, it's mainly because I'm working on a project in which you can't trust the quote-unquote finished floor or the structural slab. So we ended up, or the GC ended up having surveys at like a 5 foot mark on every floor, which that means you have to do math up and down with compared to finished floor and up to beams and things like that. So I was just curious how you guys approach it.
Yeah, a lot of the jobs that we work on, we have to go off benchmarks that the GC set up for finished floor, finished ceiling heights. It happens in pretty much every one of our interior alteration jobs, especially when they take up the floor and they start sandblasting the concrete. Most of the time we have to measure up, a benchmark that the GC sets up.
And if for some reason you don't have that problem, then you should be really worried.
Just a couple of quick online questions that I think I can handle quickly. Did they hand over the PCG file of the raw data? Yes, on request. I don't think we just wanted to use it as a reference to see. We could have done continued collection detection with the cloud and Navisworks, but we didn't. If we had to create existing drawings again, would you consider using Autodesk Labs PhotoFly? I personally have experience with that, and I haven't gotten it to work on any kind of, I do a little residential, and even taking 100 pictures around a house, I couldn't get it to make it.
It's a shadows issue. It's just absolutely horrible. Unless you had a big green light, it would be really difficult and very good diffuse light. But I have to say that there are some options out there now with photogrammetry that are pretty good, but they run pretty expensive because it has to do with creating two panoramas at two different elevations and using those set points to feed back into just getting measurements basically. But then you're still deriving a model for that online question.
Yep.
It's just a floor plan showing the final layout, so the red arrows, elevator lobby coming in, black arrows showing Bryant Park, and then to the north from the library area, there's a view of Bank of America over there and the park into. Question?
Did you use point cloud to generate this plan?
There's a question if we use the point cloud to generate this plan, and we use the point cloud as kind of an underlying model and then regenerated the walls again to make them smooth. We kind of average things out. Like each little bay is a separate wall based on the point cloud where the wall was at that point. We didn't just draw one big long straight wall, but nothing you see here is from the original point cloud.
Yeah, it's not. It was used as a reference, so it's almost like if you had like a 2D CAD underlay and built a Revit model from it, we'd have a 3D underlay and built a Revit model from that.
So the yellow is those are conference rooms. This blue is reception area. This is our ACR room advanced collaboration. That's most of our offices have this room. It has a large interactive, video screen, whiteboard, allows us to communicate really well with other offices without flying. So, go ahead.
You drop the no in there, right?
So another one of, from the architect's side, another issue doing this project was sometimes we had really good information from manufacturers as far as furniture. And actually, I think these were provided in DWG format. We just converted them. But some things were, provided by the manufacturer. Lighting, on the other hand, we ended up having to model, which was kind of difficult because, again, the ceilings were really tight. There was a lot of equipment, and we had to make sure that the actual the light. I just think the manufacturers have to catch up because they think you want to see what it looks like from when you're inside the space, but they're not thinking that in a BIM model we're doing flash detection, make sure the tops. The housing, the lights aren't hitting, sprinklers and HVAC, that type of thing.
Another piece of the space was not only having high ceilings, but there were areas where there was an intent to keep the ceiling very open. So all the services were either kept in the open office area within a specific lower ceiling zone, and then all the services, fire protection, HVAC were brought from the side. So at the same time, while we're coordinating elevations and light fixtures, we had zones that we were staying out of, so it made the ceiling work a little bit more intense. So the fact that we had to build the light fixtures from cut sheets, and potentially, I think we had to go back once or twice to the manufacturer to get some clarification about where not only just the connections were, but like where the power came in and where the power patch set. So I think that's just an important thing that as this starts to develop, as we start getting more invested in this, that the manufacturers follow as well, not only just what's being seen from the underside of the model, what the users are seeing, but what's actually happening above the ceiling what we're coordinating to.
This was one of our very first coordination meetings, and it's just kind of funny that, we've got this cutting-edge software and this new project delivery method, and our first coordination meeting, we just got paper out, we're like scribbling with colored pencils on paper.
We bought up the floozy. We couldn't resist.
But, it is sort of funny, but we had a kind of a pre-presentation get-together last week, and really, no matter how good the software gets, sometimes you just want to see everything all at once in 2D in front of you. So we still think that's an important aspect of coordination, but Arash is going to go through.
Yeah, I think one point I want to make about that one is that we met early with structure tone, education structure tone, at pre-project meetings. Okay, we're going to do this in BIM, we're doing IPD, it's great, everybody's on board, fantastic, great. So when I first met Arash, and then, the coordination meetings are happening, I stuck my head and go, where's the model? And you saw it go back a slide to this other one where, on the right there is what, where all the managers and the senior people were, and then the stuff on the left is like, Jason and Arash, kind of as a side effort. So they saw it as two separate things. Not that coordination was one thing that was supported by BIM. So that was kind of like we had a wake-up call saying, hey, we can do this so much better if we get this one track. And we got on that track, and then it started to really fly.
So this is my friend Arash from Structure Tone is going to go through the next clash detection and coordination.
How are you guys? My name is Arash Yubi. I am the BIM manager for New York Structure Tone. I have been in this role for about almost 2 years, but I've been at Structure Tone for 5.5. I started out as a superintendent. My background is architecture. RPIs are doing a little nice around here, but it's not. My concern has always been, using generative design tools to make things better, and I think that's why I got involved in construction. And Structure Tone was pretty forward-thinking when I started, and they're becoming more and more forward-thinking as our industry evolves. So, is it this way? Oh, okay. All right, so this is our BIM room. We created some LEED certified offices. I don't think they're certified yet, but we made some expansions and changes, but we had the LEED principles within the confines of how we were going to expand our office, and one of those expansion elements was a BIM room. There was a lot of talk about what kind of technologies to use. We settled on TVs because a big push between myself and some other members of the virtual construction community at Structure Tone. Reason being, natural daylight. It's really important. I think you saw that meeting room that HOK has where we were meeting. It has no windows. It was great space architecturally, but windows are very important. Natural light is critical when you have a 6-hour meeting where things get tense and people get stressed out. I think that just looking out the window is really helpful sometimes, and that's why that's the setup we have here. I want to talk about a side note about laser scanning. Laser scanning is pretty interesting technology. I don't know if any of you have started messing around with Kinects, the little tool that Microsoft created with the Xbox as an addition to the Xbox. But I think laser scanning and all the different types of technologies that are creating basically 3D data are kind of in their infancy, and of course, as the technology evolves, so does the understanding. At Structure Tone, I've implemented a policy where we only use the laser scan. And there's some examples in this project that I'll show you in the slide deck that really brought that understanding to that point, which is basically let the architect create their intent. If they need a laser scan to understand spaces they can't reach or measure, then let that be used. But we will always use the laser scan, and we would like to be there to specify it ahead of time. And I implore you to use the point cloud if you're doing any clash detection. Do not get any models from anyone. In this case, the model was created by the laser scanning outfit, which is a certified, registered surveyor. And I think we could have taken them to bat for some of the things that they've left out. And you never want to be in a position, especially in an IPD project, where it's not someone else's fault. If something goes wrong, it's everyone's fault that they left something out. So they're a good group of people, but you miss some stuff like that. You might think it's temp loop, or it might not be specified. It's really important to always have a point cloud. Just want to give you that up ahead. And if you have problems with the size of the point cloud, there's many tools out there to bring that down in size. Okay, so low ceilings. A whole bunch of subs working closely with engineers. Not something GCs really are happy about, or CMs are happy about walking onto a job with. But our company is forward thinking, and so is our engineering group, which are well represented here. I walked into a room where the engineer was literally taking cues from the subcontractors, and the subcontractors were taking cues from the engineer in this very odd fashion, which is really helpful to walk into. Why? Because there's a lot of I told you so's from both sides of that table, right? And they were not having to say I told you so in the back room. They were saying it right in front of each other. And our engineering group will talk about exactly how that evolved. The subcontractor that actually came to our meeting and was one of the most influential parties, because they have the most kind of, I guess, let's say, for lack of a better word, crap on their shoulders, is the sprinkler person. They always come in last, and they have to go everywhere, and they get really stressed out because anything that moves, they have to move. So they're well represented here. Pat's going to jump in as he sees fit. It's hard to see red here, which is unfortunate because that's really Pat's work.
See a couple of hits.
Yeah. This is June 19th when we walked into kind of the CM assisted coordination where I got very involved in aligning the models and.
We didn't talk about the general schedule here, but I think it was beginning of June. It was around June 1st. We signed the lease for the space. We had to come in by the beginning of December. So those are the bookends that we're dealing with.
Yeah, and August was basically our construction start date. Question in the back?
Yeah, can you guys possibly at some point either this or on your website or whatever sort of divulge? I assume the general contractor was on board almost immediately in order to do IPD because it's part of the contractual. But I mean, if you guys obviously provide a laser scan, I just figured that if there's any lag in understanding who the GC is, obviously that holds up the entire project.
Yeah, I think we did get day zero if you want, working with Structure Town, knowing that they were going to be part of this IPD group. They issued RFPs, for recommended subcontractors. So some subs weren't in the IPD contract, but we wanted to bring them on as early as possible. Lesson learned: they could have even been brought up earlier, the subcontractors, that is, to even possibly even make the process even shorter. As it is, you'll see we actually moved in a week or two early, but I think we could have done even better had everybody been on board, everybody on day one. And we'll talk about that further.
One of the other interesting pieces was that the subcontractors who were involved in the coordination process, sitting through the work sessions that we had, the clash detection meetings, they weren't guaranteed the installation work.
Correct.
Which added another, a small interesting layer to the job. So we had a room full of people who were interested in the, like we mentioned earlier, the we did or good or bad.
Yeah.
But there was also a level of element where the subcontractors, they were involved in the coordination. They had the advantage of understanding the job better than other contractors because they knew the details, some of the difficulties in doing the installation work. But again, they weren't guaranteed the project. And at the end, Structures Home did put the drawings out to bid. So that's just another thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, basically the conversation went like this. You guys work with us. You guys know us. We know you. We're going to need your draftsman for a couple weeks, and you might get the job, you might not, but we'll pay you for their time. And, typically that's kind of a weird request, but, it's, BIM and IPD is a different type of tie. So just because it's a different type of tie, you can teach someone who's tied the same knot for years how to tie it differently, just because it's a different type of tie. If that metaphor makes any sense. So here 19,
Yeah, I might have clicked away. Sorry.
this is June 28th. July 7th.
We finally got that sprinkler pipe out of it, don't we?
Yeah.
That's the only one.
It was supposed to move like 3 weeks ago.
July 16th.
The thing about we're going through all these iterations and during the collaboration meetings, everybody was there on their laptops. So we got to an area where we wanted to focus on Arash had set up a live FTP site where we kind of came with a game plan of mechanical made this change, plumbing made this change, and then we took like a 5-minute window where everybody did the piece that we talked about. They updated their perspective models, and we reloaded it.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, all right, we're fine-tuning this thing as we're going along, almost like carving out something from stone, fixing it, fine-tuning it.
Frank, thank you for reminding me. I forgot that the PM here is the post-meeting, so this is before and after. Of course, there's a lot of
AM, PM.
it's not AM, PM.
How long are these meetings?
Yeah, so it's stressful stuff. You know what I mean? If you don't leave completely pissed off, then you're not doing your job. Basically, that's how it works.
Question?
This kind of with the time schedule there, similar to what Rehabilitacion was talking about the other day. What was your schedule for meetings and then going back, implementing decisions, shifting things like the pipe, and who was hosting the cloud detection?
Oh, so we just used we have some contractual agreements with Jan Reinhardt to use as a dev server. Is that what you meant by?
I think it's the meetings were weekly.
I host the meetings.
They were Fridays. They were Fridays, and then the goal was like Tuesdays to have stuff back.
Exactly.
The way Arash could run clash detection, like Tuesday night and Wednesday, get it back to the subs, give them some homework to have, and we meet again on Friday.
Okay.
So that was the game plan.
So Arash was running the CM was running the cloud detection.
Yes.
Within 2 days.
So the thing is that the way I run my meetings is a lot more. I don't know what's the right word for it. I don't make a book of hits and slap it on the table or send people a bunch of hits. It's like playing that game with the moles popping out. You just can't do it. So what you have to do is you have to get into people's heads and understand their psyche. If you have a subcontractor who is socially weak, meaning that he's not able to fight for his right, then you need to get in there and defend that person and make sure that their role is well covered. Pat hasn't spoken up here, but Pat is.
I'm just waiting.
I didn't want him to look at Pat and say, well, he's not socially weak at all. It's really important to note, Pat his background is engineering, right? So he's like the typical engineer, which is a good thing. I'm not dissing engineers. He's going to sit back and kind of see what happens, the lay of the land, and then he's going to react. And at that point, when he reacts, it's very decisive and correct. And then you have guys who basically are tradesmen who learn how to draft, and they're excellent at what they do, but they're going to jump out and yell things out and try to move things around as soon as they can, jostling for place. So it's 90% people, and very little of it's technology, it's visualization. So what I really maintained was that we get in the model. one of the problems that I find with anyone who works in BIM and Revit or any virtual kind of tool is they don't get in the goddamn model. You've got to get in it. I'm not in it right here because it's a good way to show it to you, but if you're not in it, like you're in this room right now, you're missing out because things don't happen isometrically, with hits and stuff. And the pyramid of work that we have is you have all the intelligence about coordination at the bottom with the trades people, the union or non-union people in the field. Then you work your way up to the architect. Now, the thing is that as the litigious society and industry we live in has started pushing responsibility and risk down, we've lost the capability of self-coordinating stuff. Now, Pat's got a really interesting piece about that because he's worked in the design end of it and he's worked in the subcontracting end. Pat, I don't know if you want to throw that out now.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that a little bit later, but kind of on the clash detection note, we also ran, like a preliminary clash detection before, well, at least I did, before these meetings started, because it's kind of hard to tell from these models, but there was a ton of stuff that moved around between week to week, so I always ran preliminary clash detection, but by the time I got to the meeting, more stuff had moved, so that's probably why there's still some problems there, because the schedule was just so compacted with stuff moving around that it was really hard to keep up with. Doing like the pre-clash detection, then doing the actual clash detection, there was a lot of there was big differences between even a couple days. There was a lot of stuff that changed.
So a couple questions about that from the RAB attendees. At what phase do you recommend to start using clash detection, or in its case, when did you start involving all disciplines in clash detection and aggregate models?
The time to start clash detection is when you have everybody on board and paying attention. So don't start it before that point because you're wasting your time. You should really just let people fly through the model.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little different when you're dealing with an integrated design, integrated project delivery approach. We, in most of our projects, advocate getting started, as soon as you're getting your engineering models.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff. Still, admittedly, a lot of our teams will say, all right, we're starting CDs, or we're wrapping up CDs, let's do clash detection. No. Or they think, well, let's just run a clash detection right before we submit 100% CDs. Ooh. It's not a one-step thing. It's a process it's part of the design. It's a quality control.
Yeah, and it's a crappy tool at that because it doesn't really do a great job of telling you what you actually. It's not an intelligent hit, and no matter how hard people might work to make that a better tool, it still has to do with the people responsible for creating the design and the people that are going to implement that design in the shop drawing.
Clash detection, not clash resolution.
That's right. One of the things that was pretty funny too was when we sat there and ran the clash detection for the first time. There were thousands of hits, but it's learning that it's also a tolerance issue. Kind of vetting those things out of the way early, sitting down and actually running the model to say, this stuff isn't in conflict with this pipe. This conduit isn't in conflict with the ceiling. What's causing some sort of amount of conflicts in the model, and you start looking at it closer, and it's some of the navigators, I guess, at the time you change it. The default was to think if it was right up against each other, and I don't remember what we changed it to, but it's a very close installation to this conflict. So we ran a model and it turned red when it was conflict, which like we talked about Patchwork being in red too. It was like, oh, we want to see red in the model because that's when we had a conflict. And there were a lot of areas where it was just very close installation, not that it couldn't be done, but it was against things like tolerance.
Yeah, the brown and red we point at Pat.
Yeah, well, that's part of what I'm going to talk about also is what is what's really a construction tolerance with BIM or any IPD project. People take this model out and they say, well, since it fits in a half an inch, that means that I could put it in a half an inch, but it's just not the case. So that's kind of what I was going to touch on later also.
So I'm just going to flip through again just real quickly. So this is the evolution. What you don't see, of course, because it would interrupt the way it would look, is all the structure that we're trying to avoid. So a lot of these changes are happening. But there's some significant steps and changes in the model. The lobby area that Frank was mentioning before is it's that line right there that just appeared to the left, south of the bathrooms. Yeah, right there. Yeah. Just ahead of that is where you see a lot of changes because we really wanted, there was an architectural element that we wanted to create kind of a niche up in the ceiling, and that was one of the issues we had there. So, yes.
I think that's a good milestone though that you just passed. So you mentioned the post meeting, you mentioned after the meeting, but that one wasn't important too.
Okay.
The trade release one.
Oh, sorry, yes, sorry.
Because not only were we working on trying to get as many hits resolved in the model, but Structure Zone had to deliver a space. So we also had a clock that was running in the background. So we made conscious of building this model, fine-tuning, doing all the collaboration, but at the same time too, Structure Zone had to build the space. So eventually we reached a milestone. We said, we have 95% of the hits under control, and Pat maybe will move his pipe to make the last couple work away, or along the lines of fine-tuning the lights like I talked about earlier. So that was, I thought, as we started getting closer to that meeting, and I have some notes here that got a little closer, but I thought that was one of the big work sessions because we were running out of time.
Absolutely. The thing is that no matter how forward-thinking a group of people are, the people in the field are always nervous. It's like you're coming to a presentation to speak like I was today. I got going a lot earlier than I would have if I was one of you in the audience, and that's the nervousness that happens in construction if you got good builders. And so they're like, listen, we don't care to coordinate the last 5%. We'll do it in the field. We'll do it in the field. Of course, as they trust the process, they'll trust the effort on this side of the table as worthy of taking an extra week or so, which is a lot of the people in this room might see happening on the jobs that they're on. So here's an interesting point to make. On the other jobs that I've been doing, we are coming out with a coordinated model with all the trades involved. But here, as you saw in James' portion of the presentation, we are creating implementation documents, and that mostly meant shop drawings, but it also doesn't mean shop drawings because the only trade that we couldn't procure draftsman for was the only trade that has to be a union draftsman, as far as I know in the city, which is your ductwork. So we went from this as trade release to this in shop drawing, the yellow being, I'm colorblind, I guess that's yellow, being what we were in design, trade release. And then this other color, but clearly ductwork, being what the shop drawing that was then sold to the sheet metal subcontractor, right? Lesson learned, try to go air direct in IPD if you can. Of course, it's ridiculous cost for union draftsmen, but there is some kind of concession that can be worked out, especially in this market for that kind of situation. But as you can see here, there are some changes in the ductwork, and that negatively affected Pat the most, which he will definitely speak to. The question?
Yes. Was this at the implementation stage? Are you getting these union shop drawings for implementation stage?
Well, no. So here's a trade release, and everyone's go,
Right.
and then our mechanical subcontractor who does the piping and the ductwork says, okay, I need to sell to someone who actually makes sheet metal. So then we gave them the design, and then on August 15th we got back to this, and we all freaked out. But we were able to, because we're IPD, we're a team, we were well coordinated amongst each other, we were able to include that new draftsman in the team and work out the issues.
So basically what happened with that was, I showed up with all my pipe on the job and none of it fit because it was all in the way of, what we had originally coordinated. So that was like, obviously it's, it didn't make you feel, totally good about the whole BIM thing, but it's a new process. There's obviously going to be some hiccups in the,
You guys didn't see that one come.
hiccups in the process, but everything got worked out the way it needed to get worked out, and I think it was ultimately a good thing because the sheet metal contractor learned a lot about it. It was the first job I think I've ever been on where the sheet metal contractor had to move his ductwork around my pipe. I mean, that probably never happened. That made me feel pretty good.
Can I ask a simple question? I'm not all familiar. You're saying that trade release, you had one design, but the pink is what the draftsman actually created. So how many weeks before trade release are they actually drawing the pink?
Okay, so this is the situation. On any other job, we would have coordination happening, and we would bring in the sheet metal contractor, the guy who's actually drawing the ductwork that may go directly to the machine or may have one intermediary before it goes to the machine that laser cuts and then fold, and then, all the other good stuff, right? So we went down the road with somebody who was trained in creating ductwork design, but there wasn't a shop behind it, meaning that they basically were holding space for that ductwork contractor. But when you get on there, there's millions of shop standards, and that's the shop standard. If you look at the far end of the picture, let's go back here. You see, we were drawing a square ductwork, which usually takes more space, meaning the radiuses, you save space in radiuses. So at the very end of the picture, right above the mailroom, right there,
Top left?
yeah, right where the line crosses. Watch what happens. See, they use radius ducts, right? So you go square to radius. And though you might think that saves space, it also creates, and you need a wider duct in some situations when you have a radius elbow. So he was giving us space, but a space we didn't need, and therefore it created havoc in certain points, especially what you don't see is the columns that would create constriction points. Yes?
So at that point, once they came up with there were basically two designs, right? One theoretical and then one from the contractor, meaning it's like practical.
Yes.
Who was giving more?
Who was
At the end, there
Who
was
was giving more?
we made on who's right.
Who's right? Okay, so
Who had more? The previous the guy coming in.
Really, the whole point of this IPD thing was to have a model that you could build from when we finished it, when we finished the trade release. So technically, all this pink stuff, that was wrong. I guess contractually with, the sheet metal contractor and the mechanical contractor, they could go, the mechanical contractor could go back to the sheet metal contractor and say, we got to work this out. But, technically, whatever we finished at trade release was what was supposed to be built.
Yeah, just to clarify, it was just a union rule. Everything was coordinated. Everything would, IPD would have worked magically, we believe, if it wasn't for this union rule. It was just something that was kind of a wrench thrown in, at the very end. Right. So that, had nothing to do with IPD not working. It was just a union rule that we had to abide by. And as Rob said earlier, what should have happened is we should have hired a union draftsman to be in, while we were coordinating earlier on.
Yeah, no, so that being said, and I'll get to that question in a second, I want to mention, I only work with unions at structure cone companies, and they're great people, and there's a lot of input that we got that was useful, but it has to be said that they are working off the shop standards. There's some expensive machinery that they have that determines where a lot of things happen with the ductwork and how big they can make it and how wide. And so I think that, what we had to do is we had to take a bite out of a situation that could have been a disaster. And what normally would have happened is a lot of people at this table would have left. And Pat and I would have to tackle it by ourselves and try to figure it out. But everyone at this table and the people behind them stepped up to the plate because it was an IPD. So I think it was an IPD success in some ways in that, and only because of that. Now the question.
Well, first, it's a great example actually of reality, and I'm glad that you addressed it. At least now we've talked about the human elements. You have to coordinate amongst yourselves, not just technology in the IPD. The question that I had is in construction. Do you guys use any? Do you use the model to plan the actual construction operations, not just
absolutely,
layout?
Absolutely. But the thing is,
You guys put the schedule.
well, the
question. Repeat the question.
Like linking the does structure run use the model for actually figuring out how to build something, right? The interesting thing about that is you have a real challenge in a person in my position, mostly because of my perception. I'm part of the operations department. I was a super, so I talk the talk. As unfortunately, as you can tell, my language is kind of in the gutter. Mostly, I'm actually controlling myself here. It's working for a GC. So I talk the talk and I walk the walk when I need to, but it's hard to convince certain people of how they work, how they should work with something, right? If someone is used to looking at a 2D set of plans, and if you're hunting for treasure, you're going to use a set of plans. You're not going to use a 3D model, right? That's the way they think. And that's the way they go. So you're going to create a 2D drawing. They said, I want to see the coordination drawing. We put a coordination drawing in front of them, which is basically gobbledygook of different colored lines, right? And they deciphered it in and of themselves. You have to speak their language, and then once you speak their language and you see them scratching their head, you have to be there when they're scratching their head and show them the visual and show them how to use the tool, and they adopt it. But the fact is, in the down and dirty interior construction world of structure tone, there is very little left to planning in terms of what virtual construction can add to the picture, right? There is that consideration of elevator size and putting that into the model and taking a hard look at what your lengths of pipe can be and how that goes in, but that's just as easily found if someone visits the site, and any good builder would visit the site. So I'm hard pressed to say that there's great examples of how that works today. I'm doing an extensive project with Frank Gehry at Signature Theater, and we use it extensively there because nobody even knows what these things are that are coming in. They're like, that's a staircase? Like it's just a bunch of, mangled up steel and plywood, and I think there it's used extensively. But in this interior fit out, we didn't have the time or the body of people that have already used the tool to say, hey, listen, guys, we can plug the schedule in and see how it goes. The schedule was literally something that they knew in their heart. I mean, it's a really weird thing. I know it sounds weird to say that there was no implementation of it, but it is actually an interesting dilemma or dichotomy of situations when you have old school gray hair, as they like to call themselves, and dinosaurs, and then you have these young whippersnappers, as they like to call me, playing video games. That's kind of.
I think it's also an interesting question because talking about the IPD contract itself, in that contract you usually stipulate what BIM uses are intended to be implemented on the project. So therefore, the models are all set up accordingly. This one, as you can tell, the primary one, I think pretty much the sole one that was left was 3D coordination. I think we threw in estimating and stuff in there just kind of as a whim. But again, because it was such a short schedule, we knew it was just like model, get it coordinated, get it built. It could be used on a larger project, longer duration for, planning, for project controls, for estimating and layout and things like that, if you have the time. That's probably one of the key takeaways is that.
Kind of on that note, I memean, my firm pretty much does, one of their biggest market segments is interior alteration work. So they could just look at, we just look at a job and say, I know that when the tin is X percentage up, that's when we're putting the pipe on the job. Obviously, BIM, the IPD and the BIM thing changes that a bit because technically you should be able to say, well, it doesn't really matter which trade goes in first. Obviously, they can't put the ceiling up before you put the sheet metal up, but to have the mechanical trades in the space at the same time, or have the sprinkler pipe up before the sheet metal, or before the plumber comes in, you could potentially do that with BIM, but it hasn't gotten to that phase yet where people are super comfortable saying, well, this is exactly where I have to be. We kind of saw it on this job. I could have said, well, this is exactly where I have to be, and I'm going to go there and put the pipe up, but I went to put the pipe up, and I couldn't be there because the sheet was. So there's still kind of that gray area between, the whole scheduling issue with, is this really going to work? Or I could put stuff in, out of the traditional building sequence.
I don't need to be long-winded here. I just want to show a couple more slides because there's a lot of important people that you can speak here. But just one thing, you see that gap up there between the concrete deck and what looks to be the edge of the sheetrock, right? In the down market that we were in, the real estate agent said, hey, why don't we laminate all the beams and then might sell it easier? Well, I mean, it sold it to HOK, but then you have to visualize how great the space is going to look. So that's what we went around and poked holes in, because of course the laser scan's not going to see through that. And Jason and I forged a friendship from measuring from sheetrock face to concrete beam behind. It's a laborious process, but that's a part of IPD. And who the hell has ever heard of an architect and a builder going out to the field and taking measurements together? Because that's a liability nightmare. But hey, what can we do that?
I also just think about the coordination process too, the being involved on this part of the project and the coordination process as well. Not only because the schedule is tight, so we needed everybody who was involved in the job who could make important decisions available, but it was also because we were invested in the mindset of what the IPD was delivering. You know, we were not only as HOK as the architect, they were also the client, and we wanted to make sure that this project succeeded. This was an opportunity for us to actually work on an IPD project, and to get completely invested in it. We were part of these normal construction projects that we identified coordination meetings, and their clash detection at this type of field.
It was a hodgepodge of everything that was coming up, and even design changes, as it was going on. I'm going to do something really crazy and show you a picture of where we created duct light pockets in the ducts. This is something that normally they don't like to tell architects that we do, but we do it. And that's when we have problems that we can't get around, and we know we would really upset the architect if we lowered the ceiling.
Do we have that slide for visual evidence?
Look at the next slide here. This is the same two color ducts. Okay, you see this duct, the new duct, that other color, the non-yellow one, or whatever you call it. Yes, pink. Okay, so that's proud, right? Meaning lower than where the duct we had designed, as you can see. If you go back, you can see that created a situation where it looked like it fit, but it didn't because of back situations. Plus, when you have the end of the run of the duct, usually between a couple lunches and stuff like that, you get a half an inch here, half an inch there, or a couple days, and it comes back to bite you. And that's where it bit us, but we successfully got sign off from the engineer that it was okay. Right. And sorry. And I want to pass it on to the engineer because I know we've been moving up. You want to grab that picture?
Yeah, I can make this a chance.
I'm just switching mic around. A couple of questions that were submitted online. I think it was from Cal I think he's still in DC. Just wanted to know if we had a co-located team, and we didn't. I think we might have talked about it at some point, but just again, because it was such a short schedule, we decided it wasn't a good idea to get everybody all in, working in one space, even though they spent a day a week in Arash's office in the BIM room, but it wasn't co-located. And there's a couple other ones that I guess I'll just get out of the way. If I can reopen my question pane, where is it? Did the subs coordinate before modeling where to initially place elements such as within a busy car? I think we've been talking about that, yes. Trimble total station used for the Z, no. Is that it for now? Okay. Sorry for the interruption.
No, I think it's fine. I'm Frank Padilla from Flying Kurtz. I'm here with Cheryl Massey at John Gurney. I'm the project manager and the lead mechanical engineer. So that's why you requested the picture. I said no. Yeah, I don't have too many slides because I knew I was going to be following Arash and a lot of the things that we talked about and we followed up on. We're kind of going to come up in the conversation anyway. There's no way to really allocate some of our learning experiences and what we've been through without talking about the cloud, without talking to clash detection, without talking to coordination meetings. So I have a slide here. Just want to talk about some of the things I thought was very refreshing and just interesting about going through this IPD project as being the first type of project that I think our office has done. I know you've done some.
Yeah, I mean, I've done, when you talked about the different levels of IPD, you've done lots of projects where we did design assist or we created bridging documents for design builders, but this was the first job that, and we were not personally, we were consultants to HOK, we weren't sharing in the contractual obligations with the contractor, so we were out of that circle or triangle or whatever that was. But so we were consultants to HOK and certainly had a very strong desire to make them a happy client. And so we were contractually obligated that way. But certainly this was unique for us.
Right, we were vested, not contractually obligated. Question.
Yeah, Cheryl, would it have helped if you had been a party contractually to the IPD?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think that we certainly, we were very invested in the process. A large part of that is this was for HOK. It's our client, and we worked for them and wanted to work for them, and we wanted to make them a beautiful office.
But you still felt part of the team?
Absolutely. And the contractors were brought on early, so we were able to work with the, I was able to work with the electrical contractors. It's a much nicer relationship in this, and I've had this privilege once on another project before. It's so much easier and better for everyone involved when you can work as a team versus being more adversarial and pointing fingers, and your spec missed this, or you didn't dot this I or cross that T. So it's certainly helpful for all parties to be able to say, hey, I've got this problem, what do you think? And it was great from that perspective. It really worked out very well for us, I think.
And we could have, hoped for a more cooperative team, on everybody's part, but Cheryl, next time you need to say that, yes, you would have been more invested if you were incentivized.
We are incentivized. We want to work for you some more.
So we put out, okay, so we touched on it a little bit earlier, being involved in, what is in typical construction practice is called the coordination process. Putting up the, being part of the core and shell team of the New York Times building. The coordination process happened mostly between the contractors, laying out the plans around the table, and then every other meeting, the design team, the architect, the design architect, the engineers, whatever discipline, structural engineers showed up, with, alternating meetings to hash out the ones that come up as, bigger issues that the contractors can figure out. As compared to here, this project, we all had that mindset very early. Jason showed that picture of us working in HOK's old office, conference room, building that relationship early, meeting the structural team, and kind of being invested. I think once you accept that approach, whether you're contractually obligated or not, I think it helps the process. So the same way we're sitting here on this panel talking to you, Arash showed a picture of the structure tone BIM room. It was set up very similar. We had rows of benches like this, about 3 rows deep. 3 rows deep, and I sat in the back row just like in school. And we sat there and we hashed out all the issues. There weren't always times where the engineers had to get involved. Patrick and the other contractors were doing a lot of talking, but if they had a question where they said, can we move this up? And if it's an architectural, condition we're trying to alleviate, but at the same time we have to protect our design, in the end we're the ones responsible for that piece. We had to hold our ground there and work those issues out.
But that having everybody at the table for those clash detections, sometimes it's so simple. Can you move your panel? Can you move this pipe an inch? And it's not that important. It's easy to say, yeah, you fix it and move on. But you need all the parties at the table, right? So it was, it works very well that way. But you might understand this one.
I just figured we would talk about. So I'm, again, having understood what the IPD process was, finding out in-house that we won this project and we're doing an IPD job, Googling what it meant, and then finding out we were kind of doing an IPD job. Because it was missing a contractual element, we had a game plan of what all the trades are doing. WC Flat & Curtis was designing the mechanical, the electrical, fire protection, and plumbing systems of the project. And we all had different ways of conveying the design concept, which the contractors ended up putting together and building. So one of the things that was really interesting for me and kind of difficult to let go of was, there's a copy of my, single line, red line of the conceptual drawings. There were a couple iterations of this and a handwritten, diffuser schedule where we took those pieces, handed those both to the contractors, and they took the design intent and extrapolated it out into what we ended up using as filing drawings, which is what I have on the right. So it's kind of dealing with things out of the process. You know, typically we have a design and coordinate with the architect. Arashi isn't even aware about the job at the time. Go back and forth, some design elements change. We talk about the power of AutoCAD, and I got an opportunity to work with an older guy who's retired now, Steve Carlson, witness the hand error and the CAD error, and he just talks about how things change so quickly, and I see that still happening now. So a lot of that stuff that happens, in the design part that we held pretty close, the contractors didn't typically see. So it's handing over, a concept drawing that we would, maybe, schematic level, having done all that part, an intent for what the user layout would be. Cheryl, as a legend, put together her own plans.
Right.
The fire protection was based on an intent drawing. The plumbing was based on design criteria, what we try to do. And in the end, we got drawings from not just the first clash detection meeting, but probably about halfway through. We used those same drawings, got the drawings back from the contractor instead of actually turning them over to them. We got drawings from the contractor, reviewed them to make sure they were in line with our drawing showed, put borders on them, and ended up putting filing documents together based on that.
This is the contractor called me and goes, the engineer, they saw our drawings. I go, you always still there. What are you talking about? Just once.
Yeah. So it's a couple pieces that I think made it pretty interesting. It's going through the construction process a little backwards. So again, that plan on the right is the 2D equivalent of that isometric drawing that we were looking at before, mechanical only, and that's what we use for filing. Again, the quick schedule, long boards that work, and we didn't have to worry about redrafting the work that was already done because we were already involved in the process. We've seen the models, we've been involved in reviewing what's been out there, so we felt comfortable doing that. So we talked about some of those other pieces, and I think one of the other things that was important about the clash detection coordination meetings was the fact that Arash was a point person. I think having someone who can just lead the coordination effort, it's very trying to, it's working out a couple of areas where you're going to find a couple of hiccups and, trying to come to an agreement while protecting, the architect's design intent, making it reasonable for Patrick to build, and holding off to, what our design issues are and our design intent was. So having, structured tones, set up the FTP site where you're constantly uploading drawings and changing it, Arash setting up the weekly meetings and setting up an agenda, kind of saying like we talked about before, it was like Friday meeting, Tuesday plans. I would do the Navitor coordination, and then we'd be ready to meet again on Friday, and then we get emails that come in like this: big coordination afternoon push, and then he renames it called No Chiefs, Just Indians. Yeah, so they copyrighted it, registered it, trademarked it. So I don't know if you could do all this at once, but I thought it was pretty funny.
I always say don't email stuff, but I didn't realize it.
So I just think it's really funny too because there was a very not casual, but by the time we had gotten this far, this was towards the end, and we already had a working relationship. We made it past the bigger hurdles, So it was just the homework, the needs. The meetings were Fridays and they were pretty long, so that's why you needed the windows. And there were two just important notes that I think we should take away here when you think about IPD, clash detection, and going through this process is, it's the last line here where it says, we leave when it's done, nobody leaves the wall happy, no plans, no pens, model of bust. So it's thinking about it a little bit differently, trusting now that we're coordinating around a 3D model, minus the hiccup that happened, we're learning, but with the mechanical sheet metal contractor, I think it's important to have that mindset too. Like Rash mentioned earlier, walking through the model, at the same time too, being able to look at the plan in 2D and finding things that clash detection won't hit, catch like a pipe below the ceiling. Those are things I just think that having someone hold the lead on that, I think is so important. And then one of Rash's last notes was come with issues, leave with answers. Don't come with issues, nothing will help you at all. Don't come at all, we'll make more issues for you. And I think it really they just conveyed the point to everybody who's on the email chain. And, there's only a small number of us here at the table right now, but, the same faces, we saw them once a week. And we all had the mindset that we were working together to not only deliver, a good project to HOK and a good product, but that's something that was built.
Interesting question just came in on the web. I just want to address it. What assurance does the owner have that he got a competitive pricing from subcontractors? Were any competitive bids received? I think hopefully all my panelists will agree with me that IPD isn't about getting the lowest price, it's about getting the best price. You're working with trusted people who are going to deliver a quality product, and if it means we pay a little more for that, so be it. That's really what it is. Anybody might disagree with that?
Yeah, I mean, Structure Tone historically is not the cheapest contractor out there. They don't hire the cheapest contractors. I mean, if you want like a real cheap job, I'm sure you could get it, and it's going to look really cheap. I mean, if you want, it's true though. It's really true. If you want a good job, I mean, you pay extra money for a good job. If you want a cheap job, I mean, you get what you pay for.
And ideally, IPD, in an ideal situation, you're going to get a better project faster. And, you're doing all this coordination ahead of time, so you're not coordinating in the field. If you're doing it in the field, it's going to cost a lot more money. The drawing, we went through iterations where we were doing it together, so it wasn't, we're sitting in a room together, and like we mentioned earlier, you turn to someone and say, hey, can you move this out of the way? Done. You don't have to send an email, transmittals, and wait for 2 days and say, yeah, we'll put someone on that Friday. It's done live. So the drawings are produced more quickly, and you're coordinating earlier, so that you're not coordinating in the field. So hopefully it's done faster and for the same price or less.
In your very initial, 1 or 2 slides, there was something about public and private clients. So this is all the best price, the best product. It's fine for private clients, but public clients just don't work like that. You can't get a county legislature to commit 3 years prior to construction to Structure Tone as not the cheapest, but probably the best.
Yeah.
So how does all of this translate into the public sector?
It hasn't translated anywhere yet. You have to have a client who's willing to try something new, and once a project's done right, I think it's growing. The concept is growing. There's other ways there's design assist. There's other ways that are have the same philosophy, but really it's very.
It may take some time, but in the end, the goal of the IPD project is to to get the product that everyone wants at the end and to make it profitable. So that's something that's, although it may take some time, it's something that we can all, wrap our hands around. So it'll take some time. So like we said before, maybe the contractors, the subcontractors, or maybe a little more pricey, but we knew that the money that we spent coordinating, buying out, bidding the job was not going to be money spent in the field, and that's where it's actually more costly. So there's a trade-off between the two. You have to say, we're going to spend the money up front to save more money at the end, and I think that's one of the things that kind of helped us.
Yeah, so I just wanted the document was called IPD for public and private owners, and in it, it's a pretty long document. I extracted out just their categorization of levels of IPD, and they do talk about that. That it's for public authorities, yes, they have to by law have to go with the lowest bidder. So that just needs laws need to be changed to make that happen.
But I have to say, the economy has humbled the crap out of all the GCs, and we're doing public work now too. It's just about getting competitive and staying, keeping people working and making money. So the economy's kind of brought us to that point, but of course we are nowhere near what we should.
My kind of follow-up is, any of you had any conversations with your, other than Structure Tone, at least had a conversation with somebody?
I'll answer that from a broader perspective, I think, and I guess I wanted to make another one of these general points, is that we're not here saying that, you know, all jobs should be IPD, it's the best thing in the world, it's the magic bullet. It's, you know, our right, when we talk to our clients, we say we believe in it. You know, and you can see from Salary that we've had success with it, but you know, it's not for every client. Every client has different needs. Are they risk averse? Are they confrontation averse? You know, IPD might not be the right fit for every client. So we make recommendations on different philosophies, design assist, you know, it's the in early, get key trades in early, critical path method, anybody want to add to that? That's a question that.
The subject of the meeting is about the IPD. I have a question regarding the BIM level of the model. What we see right here is the level of details 500 to half built, as we call it, right? So my first question is it was really necessary, because we're talking about you guys talking about the coordination. Now, my first question is, it was really necessary to create a half-built model up to level 500, all the details, flanges, nuts and bolts. And then second question is, if you created the model at this level, if you really took advantage of it, if every single contractor or subcontractor used that model to create the drawings from, or they had their own guys in a house to detail this, right? Based on the model, or maybe based on design drawings.
Yes, the question
how
is.
many contractors use CNC files with coding? Sheet metal, steel, really on this project they did? Or they use Freeboard to put all this information and then shoot and then get the robot in that building or in the room, and then shoot exact elevation and took information from the model. Is that really everything was done?
Do you want to reiterate the question?
Sorry for my funny.
No,
My accent maybe. So
I'm just trying to remember what you actually said. I have like a 15-second attention span.
to create that model. I have my own company which provides the BIM services, mostly coordination. If I hear that we're talking about the coordination, to me, we actually, I think, good at the level of BS300, general representation, because I don't think you coordinated or check the cloud protection, half inch or quarter inch cold water height versus steel.
Yeah, so I'll sum up that, I hear about all that. It's basically, we're talking about level development, and for those of you that aren't familiar with LODs, there are 5 basic levels of LOD, 100 to 200, 300, 400, 500. 300 is essentially the equivalent of a finished design team construction document. 400 is the fabrication, what extra addition would we needed to be in the model to install it, and 500 is like, okay, all that plus what was tweaked as it was installed. So the question was, what kind of a level of detail did we use here? And were the subs involved actually using the model to drive the fabrication? And, I think Pat was going to answer that. The intent, at least from the architect, from the design side, was that it was to be as close to a 400 level of detail 400 model as possible. We're doing the coordination with the models with the intent that whoever's building the models is going to use it to drive fabrication. Now, that's probably not 100% sure.
Did you use it?
Yeah, for my model, we did use the model that was on the design release to fabricate pipe, and that's why when we showed up with the pipe, it didn't fit because all the sheet metal was in the way. So that's actually kind of
Great segue.
what I was going to talk about. This is perfect. Okay, so those of you guys who don't know my company, it's Aqua Pure Springfield. We've been open since 1958. We're a full-service fire protection company. We do all kinds of different work.
And they don't write the code.
And we did help write the New York City building code. and some fire department codes and that kind of stuff. So we're pretty involved in the industry, kind of on the, I guess we're like everybody else here, kind of trying to feel out this whole BIM IPD thing. But I have a couple things that I think that I learned anyway that are worth talking about. So, I mentioned before, I think somebody else mentioned before, I actually worked in consulting for a few years before I started doing contracting. And one of the biggest differences that I saw, in the BIM process at least, is the programs we use. So Revit's a great consulting engineering program. It's a great, let's put something on paper, take up space. It's not really great for building anything because, the biggest difference between what you do in designing and what you do in contracting is it's really about the detail that you put into it. So the detail that's in design drawings, you might have a good design intent. You might have, this is approximately where I want to put something. This is the approximate size of the ductwork. This is approximately, where I'm going to put this light fixture. For us, if I don't know, this is the length of pipe, it's this far off the column, it has to be cut this length, it needs to be this material, it doesn't really work for us. One of the biggest things that we talked about on Friday was, when I design something, I have to really look at how I'm going to hang it. A lot of times that kind of gets lost in translation, and a lot of the jobs that we do, pretty much all the jobs that we do, we have to re-coordinate the pipe, because the mechanical stuff changes, but also because if I can't hang it, I can't put it in the ceiling. So that's like a huge thing that kind of gets left off between, the level 300 LOD and the level 400 LOD that at least I see. Being on both sides of it, I kind of have a better idea of, why 300 exists and obviously why 400 exists. But, getting back to the Revit thing, I don't use Revit. There are some contractors that use like a Revit add-on, basically. Plumbers, I know a couple plumbers that use East Coast CAD. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that before. But it's more of, what we look for is something that we can use in 3D that we can fabricate off of. So the program that we use is HydroCAD. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that, but we can basically do everything Revit does, but also fabricate pipe off of it. And for us, we're trying to, part of this whole thing is we're trying to cut out that lag time in the schedule. So we don't want to have to one-line something and then go back and re-coordinate it and then cut it up and kind of add all these processes to what we're trying to do. We want to do it all at once, get it done, get the pipe on the job, and get it home. So that kind of, goes over the capabilities. I think for design stuff, I think Revit's great. I think it gets what it needs to get done, but for building, it's not at the point yet. I mean, I think there are a lot of better programs out there that do a lot better things. There's a question.
Can you import this HydroCAD into Revit?
Yeah, well, you can. There is a plugin that they just made that you can bring it into Revit. It works on Navisworks, which is the biggest thing. I mean, I'm actually working on another job right now that we're doing 3D coordination on, and as long as I can import it and do clash detection, they don't really care what format it comes. I can tell you right now that there are no trades out there that are using Revit, just because the level of detail just isn't there. For plumbing where they have to pitch all the piping, that's been something that Revit has had problems with for a very long time. I don't know if it's changed. I haven't used it in probably 4 or 5 years, but when I used it, it was just impossible. I just couldn't do it.
When we did clash detection, there were at least 3 different softwares being brought into Navisworks. So it's
as long as we do clash detection, there's really I don't see a reason why you couldn't use anything else.
We accept schedule models.
Yeah. If you want to do it in Excel, you can do it in Excel.
The only difference would have been if you wanted it in your Revit model, right? As a client, if you had wanted a complete Revit model with all trades, but, right,
Yeah, so, I mean, that's the key, and you might hear a lot of people saying, oh, that must be in Revit, must be in Revit, because they think BIM equals Revit, this IPD equals Revit. Now, are you doing it in 3D? That's, the key first question, great. And then are you basing your fabrication, or at least your shop drawings, on the 3D model, so that the 3D isn't like an afterthought that you have to do on the side, and it's not synchronized with the actual application or subido drawing. So those key factors, use whatever software you can, just make sure that we get it and we can coordinate it.
This also goes back to the point of handing off the model. So you don't want to redraft this.
Right.
The gold standard would be the engineer hands it off to you, and there is no redrafting. So whatever the software package is, it's
Right. I mean, no, that's from talking to everybody, and ultimately I think what we want to all do with IPD is be able to, shorten, I'm going to talk about this in a couple minutes, but shorten the distance between what the design team is doing and what the builder is doing. Because there is a lot of lost time there that can be, compacted a little bit. And, having something where I could sit down and say, well, this, even if 80% of it worked the way that it was drawn, it would save so much time. Like, I have like I said, I'm working on another BIM job right now that's coordinated in Revit, or, it's coordinated in 3D, I'm not 100% sure if it's Revit or not. And I know that somebody took like 3 years to put it together, but it's pretty much useless because there's stuff that doesn't fit. There's stuff that's into other things. There's stuff that it's into the structure. I have to move everything around and re-coordinate it. So to have a model that really works, that if you take, like I said, that 300 level of detail, if that's 50%, if that's 80%, anything that's a step in that direction would be a great thing.
Question, when you're reminded
After all of you have cooperated, after all of you have coordinated, how many change orders did you have?
Well, that's actually what I was going to, I think it's on my next slide. I don't know, it's in the second.
Yes, the summary stuff, yeah.
But how many change orders? I actually don't think there were any. Were there any change orders? No.
Yeah, there were a handful of RFIs, no change orders.
Yeah, I don't think there were any change orders. I think the thing that happened with the sheet metal contractor was we worked around it. There weren't any.
They took responsibility for it. Actually, they said, you know what?
We made a mistake. Yeah, and there weren't any hardship change orders or out of sequence work type things or anything like that. All right, so kind of back on this whole model thing. Also the biggest thing that I kind of learned from this process is I put it very politically up there: information in is information out. If you get crap in there, you're going to get crap out. The structural model that we had at the beginning of the job was not very good, and it's because we didn't really know what was going on in that part of the structural model. We had some beams that were laminated, some false soffits, that kind of stuff. And if you don't have very accurate information when you're going into this kind of project, you're not going to get very good results. And a lot of these iterations came out because the information that we had wasn't as accurate as we needed it to be to do something. It's the same. It would be the same thing in a 2D process, but we're trying to coordinate down even further. So the information that you get in is even more critical. So obviously the difference between new construction and an alteration job is you have all of that information in new construction. In an alteration job, you're taking into account, is the floor level, or what kind of, are all the beams level? Do you have existing infrastructure in the space that you need to account for? What's being demoed? What's going on with the structure? Now, a lot of times, when we get on jobs, some of this stuff still hasn't been figured out, and we wind up making changes because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. Also, the accuracy of information that's provided, as far as design team, light fixture cuts and equipment cuts for HVAC and that kind of stuff if that stuff isn't accurately portrayed in the BIM model, that's, another layer that could, you could potentially have a problem with. And then, getting on to the sheet metal contractor, the accuracy of the information that's provided by them. If they draw one thing and put something else in, then obviously it's not going to work too well. So, that kind of all goes into the whole process. A big thing that contracting in general is not used to is making changes. And when we were doing this process, it's very, very frustrating when we have to make a ton of changes, especially for this kind of stuff, because we go back to that level of detail that we're doing, the level 300, 400. It sounds like there's not a big difference between 300 and 400, but in terms of making a drawing, between a design intent and something you can actually build, there's a huge difference in detail.
I just want to throw in there, the word I guess some architects might be more familiar with is iteration.
Yeah.
Not necessarily changes as in change orders.
So, those iterations, they become super frustrating when you have to do it a ton of times to a drawing that's very developed and detailed. And that's kind of, I guess, what I was going to segue into this. The process of coordinating, I call it the jam door effect, because everybody's trying to, get into this one spot and coordinate this one spot at one time. And I don't think that works the best. I mean, I've worked on a lot of jobs. I mean, the first job I drew were actually in pencil. The contracting world is very far behind on a lot of this stuff. Like 5 or 6 years ago, I was still doing drawing in pencil. So there's still a lot of people that only draw in pencil. There's still people that do CAD. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't even, on the contracting end, that don't even know BIM exists. So people in contracting, they're very used to what works. If it doesn't work, or if it's going to cause them more problems, then they don't even want to know about it. One thing that I do know that works is, the sequence that we coordinate off. So a lot of times, the biggest trades go first. The sheet metal and the water side mechanical piping will go first, then the plumber, and then us, if we're lucky, and then the electrician, but usually it's the electrician and then us. But, that coordination process really, in my opinion, needs to be brought into what we're trying to do in IPD and what we're trying to do in BIM. If we spend more time kind of developing the trades independently and getting the biggest trades on the paper first and get them to 95%, it's going to go a lot smoother down the line. And that's kind of pretty much what I was trying to get at there.
Yeah, to follow up Pat's topic too, it's a great concept because again, if we can draw in the same order that things we built, it would definitely remove some of the iterations of even in the class detection that would happen. But like I mentioned very earlier on, we started this conversation was one of the things that made this project very interesting was that we had a very, very small window of time. So where it would have been nice to allow the metal contractor to draw first and then go down the installation path, we had to look at certain pieces a little differently and have trades draw at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, this schedule was tough to get, kind of that ideal process down. I mean, a lot of the jobs we work on, we'd love to get the ideal process down, but a lot of times you get the phone call, 2 days before you need pipe on the job and say, well, all the sheet metal's up, where's the pipe? So I completely get that this schedule was difficult to do anything like that. I think in the ideal world, it would be good if we could individually develop every trade and then kind of do it in the light of standard coordination. Yeah.
When you had your problem with, you showed up with all your pipe cut based on the trade release of the bin and the whole thing had been thrown off by the tin guy. How did that work out in the IPD with respect to the numbers? Clearly that had a cost implication. Did that come out in the wash between you?
Well, I mean, repeat that question because that's what someone in the web that asked the same question.
Okay. The question was there a cost impact basically because the sheet metal contractor was in the wrong spot, and we had already fabricated pipe. The sheet metal contractor and the mechanical contractor that worked with us on this job, they're very dear friends of ours. We've done work with them for the last 50 years. You know, in the end, if you have to make a couple changes, it didn't kill the job. I mean, we had to move some stuff around. Obviously, we hire pipe fitters and not like, pipe perfectionists. If you can't put it in one spot, they got to find a different spot to put it in. They're going to complain about it a little bit, but they'll find a different spot to put it in. That's kind of going down the whole, obviously not so much the construction tolerance part of it, but, this is a new process for everybody. If it costs us a little bit more money this time around, I mean, I can tell you we didn't break the bank with this one. We didn't make a ton of money, but we didn't, we were not on the street corner looking for a job after this either. So, it was kind of like one of those things where, we understood why they did what they did. It would have been nice if they said, well, listen, we're going to redesign the ductwork and we'll tell you about it, but they just showed up and the ductwork was different. We showed up with the pipe and the pipe was different, so.
Just a side note, as a builder, the situation is that traditionally in the field, after two-dimensional coordination, there are always hits and they get resolved. And that's the kind of the intelligence and the barter that happens on the floor, the construction floor, and basically the tradesmen and the foremen. They have a bartering system right now that is going to be decimated once we get better at what we do. And that's, and Pat won't be getting phone calls yelling at him.
Oh, that'd be great.
I
better shut my phone off. That's kind of what I was talking about, is, signing the coordination drawing. In traditional 2D coordination, everybody's on a piece of paper, you sign the drawing and say, you're not moving from here. If you move and it causes somebody else a problem, then you're going to pay for it. Now, there needs to be some kind of something like that. We tried to do that. I don't know if the mechanical contractor signed it. If they didn't, that's probably why they were in a different spot. But
also, the thing was that they saved a lot of money by going with this one contractor and having them do the drafting. And I think that they basically had to pay that money back and go to where they would have used somebody who would adhere to that design. So the old way of doing things, is clashing with the new way of doing things, and unfortunately does result in this kind of trade-off where people are like, nah, I'll figure it out, But then, in the end, they learn a lesson.
Have you had any kind of success in turning people's minds?
Absolutely. The thing is that when you have somebody like Pat in the room, and he's going, God damn it, I got to redo that pipe again, right? He's saying that, but he's doing it, right? So
I'm talking more about the first guys that go up. I mean, Pat obviously feels the pain since he comes in last more than anybody else. Right? He's more of the advocate of the system. Yeah, he's in knockers. Usually go, I'm in, it's up, I'm walking out, and everybody else, fuck with what I've just done, I don't care.
Right, but the thing is that when you have somebody like Pat in the room, and he is the subcontractor in the room, then he is literally setting a good example, in that classroom environment. And he's setting it in the field. Yeah, we've got guys, foremen, and they're like, holy crap, what? I don't have a job anymore. I used to go and talk to this guy, and I used to, he used to move, and on his other job, he moved for me, so I owe him one, so I moved around. And then now they don't have that tool anymore, and they're not upset at first. They're really happy. But I'm really afraid of what happens when we're going to drastically change the construction environment to the point that you can just get anybody to install this stuff like an IKEA set. So I'm really afraid about the industry as a whole as it goes down, just like I'm afraid about how, our engineers sitting here, what their role might be if we're not going to be using their models, or if we do use them. If we get the gold standard, that's awesome. But what a large majority of these engineers are not flat roofers and not going to get a gold standard, and not even shooting for a gold standard. So it's really scary. I mean, this is some big changes coming down the line. And to come back to what you're saying, yes, you get some people, early adopters, but a lot of people, they're just going to slap them in the face at some point during the process.
Also, just to be clear, that even though we only have Pat representing one trade, all sound was our mechanical, some pace, plumbing, egg electric, we just said that everybody here, they were all part of the process, just, I don't know if that was abundantly clear as we were talking about. It's not, they weren't, they're not just, we just want to pick one representative from each.
Mental attitude shift, not about the actual, like, particular shifting of.
There's definitely a mental shift. I mean, the guys that run my company, when we got this job, they were freaked out about it, man. They were like, I don't understand why we're doing this. It's going to take us 4 times as long in engineering time. And when the pipe didn't fit, they were like, this is why we're doing it. And they were freaked out. And obviously, I have to go off the bat and say, well, in contracting, the first person they blame is the person that draws it. So, they're like, well, how come this pipe doesn't fit? It must have been your fault. But it's kind of nice when you can pull out the model and say, listen, and you can show them a 3D and they think it's like the most incredible thing in the world, that the sheet metal's in the wrong place. But it is something that it's, in most cases in the contracting world, been very hesitant to pick up because, again, it's a change from what the norm is. Eventually it'll be, a much better way to build, I think. But right now, people are very hesitant because they don't understand technology or they don't know how to really implement it in the right way.
So it's more lessons learned like these that, as people want to try a little bit more, and then kind of have learning experiences like we have from this project as well. We'll see people more prone to using that. We had the same issue when we went from 2D to 3D. In the beginning, 3D drawing took longer. Because it's very familiar with it, and I heard jokes about when we went from pencil to 2D. That was the same thing. So I can do this 3 times faster in pencil. I was like, well, and then we got used to it, and then 2D drawing became very fast. So it's a matter of time that it's going to take to get used to doing things a little bit differently, and then actually have it vetted out to the end. And unfortunately, this was a project for us to kind of stand up here and talk about.
Start making an attempt to get to a conclusion. I think that's we had an hour of our last practice meeting, we went almost close to 2 hours, so I know where this can go, we're having lots of fun. But trust me, I think this is past the last one.
Yeah. So, kind of touching on what I was talking about before, what's the real construction tolerance? Obviously, if you can model it down to 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, they're not putting it in 1/2 inch. I mean, I don't know anybody that can put 400, 500, 600 feet of pipe up exactly straight. It just doesn't happen. Same thing with ductwork. What's the real construction tolerance? I don't think that because we're doing it in 3D, it necessarily means that we can jam stuff in there. I mean, there's some things that I do out of habit because